Welcome to part 3 of the gang stalking series. We will be going into depth into the covertly stalking techniques that are being carried out on targeted individuals and the type of technologies, artificial intelligence, Neuralink, and many other noise campaign harassment techniques. We are going to be starting off with some of the noise harassment campaigns, starting with modified mufflers. Noise harassments usually done by chopper motorbikes or loud muffler motorbikes, and usually by a gang of bikers intentionally circling the victim's location. Modified mufflers on cars are also installed and modified to emit loud roaring sounds around the target's area or the target's home. Propellers from low flying helicopters flying close used to harass victims while awake or while asleep. Other noise campaigns are followed by fireworks or firecrackers or sometimes even gunshots, bogus chainsawing, bogus lawnmowers, leaf blowers, or bogus yard work, using loud machinery in the neighborhood or the one that is adjacent to the surrounding neighborhood, close nearby the target's home, will all take part in malicious acts to disrupt the targets in a timely manner. Once the target is isolated and surrounded by the perps partaking in this type of activity, many other methods or experiments are carried out on the target to see how the target would react to these attacks. Solicitor scam callers or pre-automated callers is used by perps, usually more than one, using burner phones with spoofing applications or hardware to electronically harass victims' phones. Attacks are usually carried out in a synchronized form pattern, with one attack after another, mostly done at the same time. Like, for an example, a neighbor happens to slam a heavy object to make a loud crash sound, and a car with loud music happens to pass by at the same time. The software attacks or personal electronic device hacking are mostly carried out by operating systems such as Linux operating systems running on laptops or desktop computers nearby. Stingray devices in your neighborhood or surrounding area are used by third-party artificial cell phone towers to act as a real cell phone tower, so when the target makes a phone call, he or she would think that they were connected to a real tower, not realizing that they are actually being intercepted to a stingray where the calls will be infiltrated, cloned, or tapped in collection of personal phone data. Targets information such as phone data or personal identities such as social security, state ID, etc. is being sold and extorted on the dark web without the target's acknowledgement. Perps take part in digital group chats such as Facebook groups or social media groups or in-person private meeting setups. Rent-a-cops, also known as secret police operations, or are specifically assigned to one particular targeted individual. Electronic military warfare tactics such as very low frequencies, commonly known as the VLF receiver, is used to tune in to listen to the target's voice resonating in the throat. Ultrasound or ultrasonic sound beams is used to irritate the targets in their own home, even with the windows closed, and can cause headaches and head injuries to the target. DARPA, nanotechnology, graphene oxide, smart dust, hydrogel. This is how they can view what you are seeing through your eyes and hear what you are hearing and see your current status of your nervous system. Because of the nanoparticles that are present in your body, they act as transmitters. Sometimes you can feel a slight stinging sensation or itching or a needle poking at your eyelids. That's because your eyesight is currently being live streamed to a supercomputer along with your thought pattern. You may become slightly deaf or feel pressure building up in your inner ear. Ways you can definitely tell that you are being attacked by these type of electronic weapons is the birds in your environment will become irritated. This is the same reason why these type of electronics are implemented at public airports to keep the birds away. 5G, DNA, biometric collection, biocode, resonant frequencies, biorhythm hacking targets are being used as unwittingly lab rat experiments. Brain-to-brain interface, brain mapping, mind uploading, thought amplification, mind interface. This is the method that is used to take another person's consciousness and upload it into your dream state as if you were experiencing another person's body. They swap your dream state. All of your thoughts, good or bad, or any ideas in generals, are being exploited and stolen and stored on a supercomputer without your consent. Scalar waves are directed beams are used to have a far-reach attacks on targets' brainwave thought pattern, to also track targets by brainwave fingerprint signature, to store neural link in a supercomputer as a unique ID number on a server. Artificial intelligence is also being transmitted the target's mood state to a supercomputer to map out and arrange predicted thought patterns, as well as artificial telepathy, so the gang stalkers can set up quick street theaters based on the pre-planned thoughts, so the stalkers can try to detour the target's initial plan based on the thought. Like, for an example, staged accidents. The Department of Defense and other government agencies, of course, with your local state fusion center, is the main factor in listing and carrying out the no-touch torture acts on targets. Microwave attacks can increase heart rate and also induce heart attacks without cause. If you suspect that you are being attacked and injured by these type of electronic warfare weaponry, go to get an X-ray CAT scan and an MRI scan of your internal organs from your brain down to your last vertebrae in your spinal cord. Make sure whoever is performing these scans is trustworthy, otherwise this will be considered tampering with evidence. Keep documents locked and secured away from anyone but you to access when necessary. Keep log of incoming health hazardous frequencies, date, time, duration of the attacks. When using smartphones, it is best to refrain from using Google or Apple operating system. This can put your personal data information at risk. When gang stalkers are having scripted conversations relating to your targeting campaign, try to video and audio record them as much as possible. This will stop them dead in their tracks and shut them up instantly, but not permanently. Any suspicious vehicle circling your neighborhood, get a picture of the license plate as well as the driver if the windows are not tinted. Let the truth be known to the world. Let the evils be exposed to the world. Let the truth prevail so we can spread more gang stalking awareness to the world and to the future, and for the better good of the generations to come, to then bring proper justice that is needed.
The International Commission on the Biological Effects of Electromagnetic Fields has released a study which proves radio frequency radiation is not as harmless as the FCC would like us to think. The study examines and invalidates outdated science from the 1980s and 90s, which was used to try and affirm that radio, cell phone, and 5G radiation was safe. Their publication is meant to show, quote, how the past 25 years of extensive research on radio frequency radiation demonstrates that the assumptions underlying the Federal Communications Commission's and the International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection's exposure limits are invalid and continue to present a public health harm. Essentially, in the late 1990s, the FCC and ICNIRP set the international standard for radio frequency radiation limits to protect people from adverse effects. However, these limits were based on studies from the 1980s, involving 40 to 60 minute exposures in 5 monkeys and 8 rats, a relatively light exposure time compared to today's world of cell phones, Wi-Fi, and now 5G radiation emanating all around us. Then in 2020, in light of new research on the harms of radio frequency radiation, the FCC and ICNIRP reaffirmed the safety of radio frequency radiation based on the same studies from the 90s and 80s. Clearly, they aren't actually concerned about public health. The group behind this new study was founded in 2021 after they were commissioned through a petition signed by more than 240 scientists who have published over 2,000 papers on electromagnetic frequency, biology, and health. They are calling for an immediate moratorium on further rollout of 5G wireless technology until safety is demonstrated and not just assumed. The scientists who conducted studies in the 80s and 90s assumed many things which the authors of this new study strongly disagree with, given the massive amount of new information gathered today. They assumed electromagnetic waves used in wireless communication don't have sufficient energy to break chemical bonds. They assumed radio frequency radiation could not damage DNA. And they assumed no additional data is needed to examine 5G exposure safety. That's why they continue to recycle the same 30-plus-year-old studies. However, there was a wide range of biological effects of radio frequency radiation that were left completely unexamined, such as DNA damage, damage to the heart, damage to the brain, and even reproductive damage, especially to sperm production. Also, quote, multiple human studies have found statistically significant associations between radiofrequency radiation exposure and increased brain and thyroid cancer risk. So why did the FCC and the ICN-IRP ignore this information? One of the heart damage research papers cited in the study was conducted by the National Toxicology Program. They exposed rats and mice to cell phone frequencies and found that the higher the dose of cell phone radiation, the more increased incidence of heart damage, brain damage, cancer, and adrenal gland tumors were observed. There was also a significant increase in DNA damage in rats and mice. Other research cited in the study shows that visual learning and memory in lab animals exposed to RF radiation below the supposed safe level resulted in consistent and reproducible decline. According to another research publication cited in this new study, quote, human and animal studies have shown that the testes is one of the most sensitive organs to RF EMF exposures, and that keeping a mobile phone in trouser pockets in talk mode can affect fertility parameters, such as sperm motility, sperm count, and it can even fragment the DNA of sperm. In one study, rats experienced a decrease in sperm count, decreased sperm quality, and the testicular development of rats was impaired. Rats were exposed to radiofrequency radiation while they were still in their mother's womb. All of this after only 1 week of exposure. In 2009, ICN-IRP claims that radiofrequency radiation was too weak to cause significant damage to DNA. But DNA damage has been observed numerous times in studies cited throughout this publication, especially in the brain cells of rats and mice. Another study even found significant increases in DNA damage in hair cells in the ear canal among 30 to 60-year-olds who used mobile phones 10 years for up to 60 minutes a day, when compared to people who don't use mobile phones at all. So, with its higher electromagnetic frequency and shorter wavelength, 5G is supposedly safer than other types of radiofrequency radiation. The waves are said to be absorbed within the first millimeter of our bodies, 86% of the EMF power, with a skin penetration depth of 1 millimeter. However, as the study points out, ultraviolet light, which penetrates the skin less than a tenth of a millimeter, is a recognized cause of skin cancer. How can 5G be safe when it reaches into our bodies deeper than ultraviolet light? Radiofrequency radiation from 5G exerts its energy into our skin, our extremities, even the reproductive ones, and our eyes. It could even be causing cataracts as well as skin cancer. Who knows how deep 5G is really going? Just as the International Commission on the Biological Effects of Electromagnetic Fields has called for, the rollout of 5G should be stopped and studied further, taking into account the information provided in their new publication. Quote, because there are no adequate studies on health effects from short-term or long-term exposures to 5G radiation, in animals or in humans. With what we do know about the negative side effects of other forms of radiofrequency radiation, humanity should put a stop to the 5G revolution before it surrounds us with an electromagnetic siege and smothers us to death.